Let's have a little talk about ailerons today. I must admit, the ailerons were one of the more difficult parts of the construction on the Renegade wing. Let's have a bit of a look and see what we can figure out, and see if we can't make some, I don't know, try and make some things a little bit easier than they were for me. We'll start with having a look at the aileron itself. This is my right-hand aileron. Those lightning holes, where are we? Those lightning holes you can see up there is the main spar. The two outboard bays have got lightning holes. I think on the drawing they were an option, or in the manual they were an option. Wherever there were optional lightning holes, I took advantage of those, and I installed lightning holes all over the place. Okay, so here's our aileron. Pretty simple, really. It consists of some ribs, pretty simple ribs. We'll get to that in a minute. A main spar, a main spar with the lightning holes cut in it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. A fairly heavy-duty trailing edge, which is also holds everything in place. And where are we? Just get somewhere where you can see, maybe in there. There's little gussets, both on the top. That was the bottom. But yeah, on the top, there's gussets, which you can just barely see. It's tiny. It only goes from that rivet to that rivet to that rivet. So it's only, you know, a tiny little gusset. But there's a stack of them. There's 7 ribs, so 14 of those gussets. And of course, 14 on the other side and 14 on the upper wings as well. Now, the aileron also has a fairly heavy-duty piece here that mounts the bearing. The bearing, which you probably can't see properly, is down there somewhere. That's actually a proper sort of bearing. I think it's a plain bearing, but at least it's a proper bearing. As you'll see on the drawing in a minute, I think the original drawing called for a riv nut with the threads drilled out of it, and that's what's on this aeroplane. And it's worked for the last 30 years, but I don't think it's a very good option. It's not very good at all. And down the other end, bloody Harvards. I don't know if you can hear that in the background, but Harvards are very noisy aeroplanes. They've got a propeller that the blades go supersonic, so they make a hell of a racket. We've got an air show on here today. There's the bearing on this side. It has these, let's get around here, this fairly heavy piece that there's a push rod that drives from here up to the upper ailerons. So the upper ailerons are slaved off the lower ones. So that's another piece of the aileron. I managed to scrounge up the aileron drawings. Dun, 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 dun. This is the drawing of the lower aileron right here. We'll get somewhere where you hopefully can see something. Now, this was a complaint that I've had all along, that this drawing is not full size. It's very, very close. Actually, this one's closer than most. It's probably something like more than 95% sized drawing. Yeah, just not quite, just a little tiny bit wrong. So you, for instance, we'll have a look. I might have to take you off this tripod. It's giving me a workout here. Here we go. We'll handhold this. It doesn't work very well doing this, but I'll do my best. For instance, here's the main spar. And that's what we're supposed to fold it to, those sort of angles. These are the sizes. Okay, and here's the material. It's you're going to make aileron part number 9, which is 4 1/8 by 64 and 732. Length by 25 thou or 32 thou, you please yourself, and it's 2024T3. Okay. The bit I'm concentrating on is this 64 and 732. So if we line our tape measure up on the drawing right there, which is pretty close to where the spar's going to end, maybe a tiny bit more, maybe there, and then we go down the other end of the tape measure, you can see that it's actually not quite 64, much less the 732. This is about 8, 10, 12. It's about 63 3/4, I guess. There it is right there. So this is meant to be a full-size drawing. But this rib should be back over here somewhere at 64 and whatever it was, 64 and 732. So there's not quite an inch, it's not quite an inch wrong. But anyway, you get used to that, and the wing is worse. Now, whether the paper's shrunk over time or whatever, I don't know. The aileron, just back to the bits that make up the aileron, there's the rib there, the back half of the rib anyway. Now, there's no dimensions on that, so if you can take into consideration how much the drawing has shrunk and how much bigger that should be, that's good luck with that. It'll probably be fairly close. It'll only be a millimetre or 2 out. There's also a series of these little nose ribs as well. In my experience, this is really ridiculous. This is 16 thou, 016, 2024T3 again. 016 is just ridiculously small. It's ridiculously skinny. Maybe 25 thou would be better material to make it from. Or, 16 is just way too light. What were these other ones made from? Well, they're meant to be made from 16 thou as well. They were okay. They're not a problem. I don't know if that's 16. I don't. Maybe it is. Okay, they're fairly light, but the nose ribs at 16 thou were just ridiculously thin. As soon as you try to make this leading edge skin roll around them, they just buckle and pull out of shape and all sorts of things. So it was very, very awkward to make those bits. Back to the drawing for a second. This is the drawing number 5. Here's the trailing edge here, and just like the main spar, wherever it was, here it is here. It was 64 and 732 again, which is exactly the same length as the main spar. yeah, I think in my case, I can't remember if it was supplied in 2 lengths or 4 lengths. But the lower ones, the lower ailerons, you have about this much trailing edge material left over. This because the upper ailerons are longer than the lower ones. But that's what you're trying to make if you're trying to make trailing edge. Right. Other than that, it was fairly simple. Because there was an error in the size of the drawing, it was a little bit difficult to sort of lay the parts on top of the drawing like we did with the horizontal stabiliser and the elevators and so on. These more had to be measured. The ribs located at a certain distance. What was that distance? Now, that's a bit of a worry because what are they here? They're about 11 inch pitch. Yeah, that's no, it's not as straightforward as being an 11-inch pitch, but they are all the same pitch. There's 7 equally spaced ribs, and it doesn't matter. The thing that matters, the really critical bit, is that this outboard one is located in the right place. The inboard one's located in the right place, and that the aileron's not twisted. So you've got to build it on a flat bench. These other ones, it really doesn't matter. They don't line up with the main ribs or anything like that. This one almost does. Yeah, but so you're not trying to line everything up perfectly. These outboard ones matter. This one and the inboard one, they matter. But the other ones in between, who gives a stuff? Just so long as they're more or less equally spaced. There is a pattern. There is a pattern on this drawing about the lightning holes, the location of the lightning holes. But again, so long as you don't overlap them or get them too close together or make them too big, who really gives a stuff? It doesn't matter. And don't try and put one where a rib's going to go. Obviously, that's what they're trying to show you there is to locate them in between here's a rib and here's a rib, and locate the lightning holes sort of in between the ribs. So that's about where we are with the lower ailerons. The upper ones have a lot of similar. They're a similar construction. The spacing will be a little bit different because they've still got 7 ribs, the same as the lower ones. But the aileron itself is longer by about the length of that trailing edge piece that offcut that I've got there, I think, something like that. So that just, you can't, they won't be identical. And of course, the upper wing's got sweep, the lower wing doesn't. The lower wing's got dihedral. And because it's got sweep, let's have a look at this one I prepared earlier. The ribs are actually on an angle. The ribs actually pretty much face straight into the airflow sort of thing. So that just adds another degree of complexity that the lower ailerons don't have. So I'd suggest starting on the lower ailerons first if you were building from scratch. Work out what the issues are and so on the lower ones, and then try and build the upper ones. Hopefully that's the drawing underneath this drawing. I didn't check. I just pulled them off the shelf just before. Let's have a little look. Whoops. Yeah, this is the upper ailerons. But it'll have most likely have all the same issues that the lower ones have. So there, look at that, wonderful. This is drawing number black hole, if you can work it. I think it says drawing number 7 actually. Impossible to tell. But anyway, the nose ribs are straight by the looks of that. There's the bearing attachment arrangement. Well, don't use that. You use the one that's in the manual. This is, I'm pretty sure that's a riv nut. They've just drilled the threads off, something like that. Yeah, the nose ribs are 90 degrees to the spar. But the main ribs are not. And of course, you build a left-hand one and a right-hand one. Here's the other rib coming down here. Yeah, I don't even see any. I don't see any spar measurements or anything how to make the spar. Obviously the spar is the same as the one on the other drawing, but it's not going to be 64 inches. It's going to be at least probably another 10 inches. Let's just see how we go measuring this. Yeah. We're not gonna be super duper accurate with this. But so we're coming from about there somewhere. Yeah, this is 70, looks like 71 and a quarter maybe, something like that. But I don't see that on this drawing. Honestly, I don't see it. And same with the trailing edge. 71 and 3/4, it says, for the trailing edge. This trailing edge material here. So I guess the main spar has to be the same, 71 and 3/4. But there you go. That's kind of it for ailerons. They're not very big. They don't have very many pieces to them, but they're a bit of a bugger. They're not quite as sort of straightforward as they should be, probably because it's fairly light construction. There you go. That's it for ailerons. I don't know if there's anything else I can really show you. There's not too much else to it. This bell cranks are not connected up, so that's why they just sort of flop around wherever they want to, and you can hear scraping and all sorts of things. They're not connected, so don't expect miracles. I left a fair bit of gap here because I don't want to use all that space up when I put the fabric on, because there's going to be some fabric on this side and fabric on that rib, and that gap's going to close up. So I was fairly generous with the amount of gap I left. There'll be something about that in the manual, I'm sure. And same on this end. The wing tips have still got to be put on yet, so this piece is not in its final resting position. Not until the wing tips go on. But yeah, No, old Murphy they made it a little bit difficult. And if you, I'm quite convinced, matter of fact, I'm 100% convinced that you could not build an aeroplane from these drawings, given there's no dimensions on most of the sheets. They just expect you to, they expect you to build it on top of the drawing, but then the drawing isn't full size. So how can you build it on top of the drawing? You've just got to take a guess. But if you can pluck out the bits that are important from the bits that are less important, like it really, with these, it doesn't matter where those ribs are either. It matters more which way they face, I suppose, and even that doesn't matter too much. Where that really becomes a critical thing is when you go to try and rivet the ribs onto the spars. If it's folded the wrong way, it is way more difficult to rivet them on. These ones here all face inboard. Like that faces inboard, that one faces inboard, except the last one, and of course the last one faces outboard. That's just how it is. And the upper ones, I think, are the same. From memory, I can't remember. But you just got to take a little bit of care with that. But where their actual location, who cares if that's an inch that way or an inch that way? It's not the end of the world, so long as they're fairly closely, evenly spaced. That's the main thing. That's it. Happy building. Enjoy yourself. I'll go back to my happy covering now, which I'm up to putting some tapes on. This is the underside of my elevator, and I'm up to putting some tapes on there before I flip it over and do the other side.